And we have officially started the recording. What's up,
Woo!
Yeah, woohoo! What's up, everybody? This is Smiley and
Grace.
sorry, first day jitters. All that fun jazz.
Oh yeah, I'm
Uh,
shaking here.
yeah, and this is Nightmare. It's a podcast that we just talk about different horror movies that we enjoy and see how things are with it, what we like, what we didn't like, all that fun stuff. There will be other guests on here. Grace probably won't be on here full time. We'll see. I'll be here though. I know, disappointing, right? So, anyways, before we get started on everything, I guess it is fine. I guess we just do a little bit of introduction to ourselves. And if Grace, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm Grace. I'm 23. I actually started getting into horror when I was, I think, 12 or 13.
Really?
Yeah, it started early for me. Um, my dad and I went to go see a scary movie for Halloween, and then that just became a tradition. And then we bumped up to going to haunted houses,
Uh, what was
the whole
the
nine yards.
what was the first horror movie that you remember seeing that you actually enjoyed?
That I actually enjoyed.
Yeah, yeah, we have to get that specific here, folks, because
Get that out of the way real
because
quick. Yeah.
there are a few horror movies that's just like we don't talk about Jeepers Creepers at all.
Nope, get out of here with that.
Yeah,
Um,
the first one
it
was good, but
was
we don't talk about the director.
oh no, no, no. The first one I watched that I actually enjoyed was Eli. Um, it's a it was a very interesting watch. But it had a good cast and I liked the cast, so I was like, you know what? Might as well check it out. And then I ended up actually really liking it. And then I was like, I can continue to work with this. And then that's when the downhill horror spiral began.
The downhill horror spiral. Yeah, I guess that's what most people will call it. The quote unquote normies. I guess I don't know. Yeah, so that's cool. Well, I'm Smiley. I'm 27, about to be 28. Damn, I'm about to be 28 years old. Anyways, uh, I've always been fascinated with horror. I think as long as I can remember. The first ever horror movie that I actually remember watching was the remake of The 13th Ghost with the guy that's from Monk. I don't know if you remember seeing that movie at all.
I
Uh,
never watched it all the way through, but I've seen bits and pieces of
yeah,
it. Yeah.
it's an interesting movie. It's interesting. Um,
It seems like one of those ones that you gotta know what you're watching before you watch it.
you have to like see it from the beginning. You can't just like hop in the middle because then you're just like, oh, why is he running around with a pane of glass? And what's the deal with Matthew Lillard and all that?
Yeah, the clips I saw, I was like, this is a fever dream.
Yeah. Well, that is early 2000s horror. That
Exactly, that'll do
is
it.
that is early 2000s horror. Um, anyways, yeah, that was that. And then growing up, my favorite franchise. I forgot to ask you this, and I'll just say this. Growing up, my favorite franchise was the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Little fun fact: I used to have a special collector's edition of the DVD set for all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, including Wes Craven's New Nightmare. And you lined them up perfectly in chronological order, whatever order they're supposed to be in. And all the backs make up Freddy with his back towards you with his claws. And
That's
so,
incredible.
yeah. And then now, actually, my favorite horror series has to go. It's either what we're talking about here, the Conjuring series, or the Friday the 13th series. Just because it's the Friday the 13th is a really good, in my opinion, a really good series because it just shows if you look into horror, because like one of my favorite things with horror movies is there's lots of underlining meanings. I don't know if you seen that, Grace, at all.
Hmm.
There's lots of underlining meanings with like a lot of mental health things, you know. Um,
Yeah, they kind of match it up to. They don't directly come out and say it and be like, "Oh yeah, this is this." They almost personify it.
yeah, and so just like with Friday the 13th, for instance, mother like dealing with the grief, the loss of a child in the first one, and then the trauma that child went through, not only being possibly drowned, you know, and then coming back and then seeing his own mother get killed right in front of your eyes, it kind of can make anyone go crazy, you know, depending on your relationship with your mother. But I'm not your therapist, so. Um, anyways, and then also little another thing, I make my own horror stuff myself. I make small horror shorts. I'm working on it. It is a pain in the butt, and it just gave me more gratification for the people in that industry. The amount of work that goes into making that. So, Grace, before we get started, what's your favorite franchise from when you were a kid into what it is now?
It's got to be The Conjuring of for all time. That was the first horror movie that I ever saw, and at first I wasn't into it. But it always has a special place in my heart just because it was the original one I watched. Then I went back a couple years later and rewatched it, and I was like, okay, I can see why I hated this as a child. Now that I'm older, I'm like, I love this.
It's a little jump scary for a child.
Exactly. No, it's scary for a little like 13, 14-year-old girl.
Yeah,
Watched it again, I think when I was in high school.
there you go.
And then that's when I really started to get into it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, me, I got into horror movies. When I say all for as long as I can remember, I'm telling you, like I watched The 13th Ghost when I was 4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which just saying here right now, I do not recommend your children watching horror movies at that young of age because it can mess them up mentally. Um, can turn them into a couple people doing a podcast about horror movies.
Either you make a career out of it or you scar them for life.
Or both, you know?
Yeah, a little bit of both,
Yeah.
mix it up.
Anyways, all right. Well, with those little pleasantries out of the way, let's get started with this one, our first ever episode. And we're actually talking about, surprise, surprise, The Conjuring, specifically The Conjuring 2. Now, I would say, in my opinion, The Conjuring 2, out of all the Conjuring movies in the franchise, this one's my favorite. Hands down,
Agreed. Yeah.
it is my favorite one of all time because it kind of does things differently from like the first Conjuring. They took a lot more risks for this one comparatively to the first one. Now, the other ones, don't get me wrong, are good. Well, I'm not going to go that far because there are some of them that are just like, you didn't have to make this one. um,
Hmm.
but, anyways, yeah, so um, what I liked about the movie is the fact that they finally brought in Valak, you know, the nun,
Hmm.
who I think isn't Valak supposedly like supposed to be like the big bad in the series
Yeah, Valak was like top tier demon spirit, the uh the top dog.
because you have Valak and then what's the one that is haunting Annabelle? Because we do have to be specific. The demon is not inside the Annabelle doll. It is haunting
No, it's
Annabelle.
just
It's controlling it.
right.
Um,
I don't think they mentioned the demon's name.
no, they did. It's some. You know what? That's another topic for another day. Uh, um, anyways, um, there's not a lot of cons in my opinion. I think for me there could have been a little bit more digging into Valak's past
Yeah.
if they were going to try to introduce that, because Valak, if you look at it in the Nun series, obviously it's just about Valak, right? The Nun 2, Nun 1 and Nun 2, it's just about Valak. And Valak is fighting the one of the main protagonist's sister in the Nun. I don't know why the name is fleeing from my brain right now. Um,
Uh, Vera Farmiga's sister.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't
the
remember her
the
name either.
well, I'm talking about the demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren. So Lorraine Warren's sister is the one fighting Valak um, in
Okay.
in the Nun 1 and 2, and then Valak goes and messes with that family in England. And so I wished if they were gonna put Valak in the in like the main line, because you know you have the Conjuring, and then you have all these other outsiders. You have the Conjuring, you have, and then branching off of that, you have the Nun. Another branch off is you have Annabelle. Another branch off is La Llorona, right? And
Hmm.
so you have all these things, and they decided to, in between the Nun 1 and 2, kind of put Valak in to the Conjuring 2. And I think, but like other than that, I think the way it was shot, the way they did things with like the jump scares, 10 out of 10. Um, just everything overall. The big climactic ending where she says the name and the demon supposedly dies, but we all know that didn't kill the demon, right? Um, yeah, that's what I think. There's not really a lot of cons to discuss with that movie in particular, um, and it's based off of a true event. You know about that, right?
Yeah, London's Amityville.
Yeah. If you know, do you mind first talk about the what pros and cons you got from the movie, and then you want to discuss the story behind, like the real story behind the Conjuring 2?
Yeah. Um, I gotta agree, there's not really very many cons. Because in my opinion, this one was already scarier than the first one, the first Conjuring, where they covered the Annabelle story, because they had to kind of make stuff scarier for the film
Yeah.
in that one. But this one was already pretty scary, so they didn't really have to like make the doll scarier because there was already a demon and it was already possessing a child. Like it was beautifully written, and it was all the actors did a fantastic job.
And also give it to
Um,
James Wan too, like the
oh
director.
yeah.
I mean, he's not only does The Conjuring, he also did Insidious, the Insidious movies.
Hmm.
Fantastic jobs with those as well. So shout out to James Wan as well. I don't know if he'll
Yeah,
ever
he knows
listen
what
to
he's
this.
doing.
I don't know if he'll ever listen to this, but if he does, put me in a movie, please. I'm begging you. I don't care if I die within like the first 30 seconds.
Just you want to see the name on the screen. Get two
Yes.
seconds of screen time. There you go.
It's just I just want to be with him to kind of learn from him as well, because he's one of the best horror directors of all time as well. I mean, he even did Saw, some of the Saw movies.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing for
Yeah.
sure.
Anyways, continue.
Yeah. There was like that little kid's toy that the boy was playing with that did that little song. Um, and there was that one scene where, um, for lack of a better phrase, the Hat Man showed up. Um,
I don't know if he's called the Hat Man or he's called like the Jangly Man.
I don't know. I've just always called him the Hat Man because that's what my version of the Hat Man looks like. Um, but then, he's playing with that toy, he's winding it up,
He's
the song
called
is
the
going.
Crooked Man. He's called the
The
Crooked Man.
Crooked Man, that was
Yeah,
it. I knew it was something.
and it's from a nursery rhyme,
Yeah. Um,
which that could be another demon monster thing that they could be facing in the Conjuring in the future, probably.
I was gonna say, is there like a little Easter egg going on in there? Oh,
They
maybe.
said there's like a possibility, but with how the like the last Conjuring movie did, they are making another one. And they said that could be the final one, so we'll see.
We shall. No, everything was perfect. I think that even if they changed one thing, like even just one actor in that, it would not have been the same whatsoever.
Yeah. Oh, they all did a phenomenal job, and if you look at the behind the scenes, they all really cared for each other, made sure they were all safe. You
Mm-hmm.
know. Anyway, so yeah, Grace. So, what is what is the story, like the actual story? We'll go over like the actual story behind like the true story, and then we'll kind of discuss the events of the movie. So if you want to talk about the actual events that transpired, because you said it's like London's version of the Amityville horrors.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it was known as at that time. Um, and I think they even put it in like the credits, like when they're saying based on a true story. Um, so basically it's called the En was it Enfeld poltergeist? I think it was
Enfield.
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 Yes. Yeah, basically these people were having some supernatural happenings in their house. It was these two sisters that it was mostly targeting. Oh, I got the crappiest chair. I'm so sorry.
You're good.
Um,
What's a
they
podcast without any randomness in it, right?
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the mother Peggy had called the police because she had witnessed furniture moving and some of her children had heard like random sounds in the house that just didn't match what was going on at the time. And when the police stopped by, they reported witnessing even the chairs and the furniture moving without any like reasonable happenings. And then over the next, I think it was about a year and a half or 2 years, things just kept escalating. And eventually, um, at one point, one of the daughters had been lifted up pretty much like by her hair, I think it was.
I think there's a picture of it. Um,
There is, yeah.
for the video portion of this, there will be a picture of it on the screen. Um, so, but yeah, so yeah, she was lifted. Like, there's an actual photo of her being lifted up by her hair that I think her mom took, if I'm right.
Yeah. Or unless I think it happened when the Warrens were investigating, as they were like provoking the demon.
Yeah. Anyways,
But
so
yeah,
continue.
it's
So
floating out there.
yeah,
Yeah, and it got so bad that um they had called a priest, um, and the priest wasn't able to come, like there was um or something. So either way, the Warrens had to end up doing the exorcism on the house and the people.
yeah, because like, what is it? It got so bad in there because even Ed and Lorraine were were being attacked as well. But also, and I did love how they brought this up in the movie is it was one of the most. It was like the most media coverage of a haunting in history of England, at least I believe, with the media like all over it, and there was a huge thing where they thought everyone was faking it.
Yeah, all of the proof had seemed so like, oh no, like there's no way a ghost could have done this because a person could easily just as do this. They thought the mom was trying to get better housing from the government or whatever. Um, they thought it was all a scam at first.
And I do love the fact that the movie looked into that because like in the movie like Valak made them make it look fake to not only get to deter the Warrens away, but also to deter everyone away because Valak knew if the Vatican sent in them to exorcise him out, that there's not much he can do, right?
Yeah, he'd be out of the job.
Yeah, but it wasn't Valak in in real life. Um, it was like the actual person um, that the actual person that he was haunting, the person who used to like the previous owner that lived there before.
Yeah, he had passed away there, and Valak was communicating through him.
Well, that's in the movie.
Um,
In real life, it was just him. There wasn't
oh,
like a
was it?
no.
Okay.
It wasn't. There wasn't a demon in real life. It was just in the movie, and it was Wilkins, which is the actual person that supposedly was haunting them. That we can all say just has to say allegedly because obviously, like yeah, we have like all this media coverage and everything, but to have actual proof is a lot harder to pull out actual proof of a haunting,
Hmm.
right? And so and so, yeah, and it was like I think one of the biggest speculations, and they brought this up in the movie as well, is when the reporter came out. In the movie, it was Ed, but when in real life, when the reporter came out, the daughter said Bill will only talk to them if their backs was to them, and
Right, which was another like,
that's what kind of sparked is this real, is this fake, sort of
yeah.
situation because of the fact that it was like I don't know because of the fact that it could be real, it could not be real because they're making us look away, and the girl could just be doing a different voice because it would sound like it was two different voices, right?
Hmm.
And so, but yeah, so that's like why I think that was a huge inspiration for this movie was that because the Amityville horror was like for the first Conjuring, right? That was the first one, I believe. Yeah, it's been a while
Yeah.
since I've watched the first Conjuring, um, and I think we talked about this before we got on here. It's on Prime right now. I don't know why they took it off. They took it off of. I don't know why it's no longer on Max and Netflix and stuff like that. And it's on Prime, and it's not even included with Prime. You have to pay for it. Like you have
Yeah,
to
it's
buy the movie
absurd.
or rent the movie, right? And so it's like, look, I don't use Redbox and I don't use Blockbuster anymore. Blockbuster is a little nice little thing for people who are up in the age, you know.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Actually, there is still one.
Oh, one
Yeah,
lonely.
it's up in Oregon,
Okay.
and it's called the last blockbuster in the world.
They know it.
Oh yeah, and they get so much traction there too. It's insane. But anyways, off of that side tangent, and so yeah, so I think we can just start with the events of the movie. Um, it kind of starts out. They were what were the Warrens? I don't remember what exactly hauntings that the Warrens were investigating.
I
Um,
believe they were just finishing up the Annabelle
no,
because
no,
it
no, no, no,
opens
no,
with,
no. It,
or
it wasn't
no, in the
Annabelle.
movie.
There was no. They were finishing up the Amityville. one,
Right.
because The Conjuring is based off of like the Conjuring house, which is something different. It was the Conjuring house was haunted by um, the witch,
Yes.
and so they were finishing up the Amityville horror, like the Amityville case, when Lorraine Warren went into a vision and saw Valak killing her husband. And so she kind of stayed off after a while, right? And then
Yeah.
they kind of like retired
Yeah,
in a
they stepped back
sense.
for a bit.
And I think at the end of it, they take it to the Warrens Haunted Museum. They take something from the Amityville house that they captured the demon in into the Warrens Haunted Museum, which is a real place, but I think it's no
Yes.
longer open to the public because you
I
used to be able to visit it, but not anymore.
Yeah, that'd be so cool if you still could. Like
Because
we should do it.
I mean, that would be great, but I think like
Mhm.
the new owner's the son, or no, the daughter and the son-in-law of Ed and Lorraine, because Lorraine was the last one to have like because Ed passed away and then Lorraine just passed away not that like was it, a few years ago.
It was recent, yeah.
Yeah, she passed away a few years ago, and so it went to her son-in-law, and daughter, and they just had way too many problems because you know it was a popular place to go to, right? But then when the Conjuring movies started coming out, then it got flooded with people. You know, it got
Yeah.
flooded, and then unfortunately, when you have a flood of people, you get things that get touched when they're not supposed to be touched, stolen, things stolen they're not supposed to be stolen. But the difference
Mhm.
is when you stole from that house, they said like a couple weeks later that object would reappear and then with along with a apology letter. Because
Oh
it's
yeah.
like
Things are gonna happen.
you stole a haunted artifact, like
What did you expect was gonna happen?
you're right. And so they put it um, in there with the Annabelle doll. It's in there because I think Ed and Lorraine like they because the Annabelle case is its own, like the movie itself it's its own thing with Ed and I don't even
Yeah, it's
believe
got a
Ed.
spin-off.
Yeah, with Ed and Lorraine Lawrence, not even Warren, it's in that one. I think they're only in Annabelle Comes Home, which takes place before The Conjuring 2, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, no, it takes place during The Conjuring 2. Annabelle Comes Home, like the events of Annabelle Comes Home, takes place during The Conjuring 2.
Right,
So,
right, because they
yeah,
worked that in.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so they go and drop that artifact off, and then it's like months later, they get a call from the Vatican that they need to go to England, and Lorraine has another vision of was it Lorraine or was it Ed that had the vision of Valak coming out of the painting?
That was Lorraine.
Yeah, Lorraine had a vision of Valak coming out of the painting and attacking her, and then they set off to England to start working on what they need to work on. So,
Yeah, can we just talk about that scene for a second?
yeah.
Because
Oh, it was a great
it's
scene.
it's beautiful. I mean, because Ed, he's sitting there doing that painting. He's like, I don't know, I just dreamed of this creature and I just had to get it on paper. So he's sitting there painting this painting, and then they hang it up in their basement or like the lower level, something like that.
Which, first of all, it's like any logical person. Why would you put that painting in your house?
Right. No, let's just hang it up in the main room right above the TV so everyone can see it when they walk in and have nightmares for years.
It's like they put it in their basement, which it has been shown that their child does go into that basement.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know,
no, it's an open
their
space.
young child has been known to go into that basement. So you just have a painting of Valak right there.
Yeah. Yeah, but like that scene, because originally she sees Valak kind of just like standing at the end of the hall and just walk past, like down the hall. And then she sees the shadow coming around on the wall to like where the painting is hung up. And when those hands, Valak's hands, creep around the frame of the painting and just bum rush her, it's incredible. It's beautifully done.
It's absolute cinema.
Masterpiece.
Well, I think that's like one of the things that really helped with the movie. It was like everything, especially with that scene, was just shot for shot was just really good.
Yeah.
Just shot for shot of like they do on there. It's just was just amazing.
Yeah,
And
no,
so
everything is just perfectly done on there.
yeah, and yeah, and I think and then we skip to the events of like they start and then it doesn't even get to the part where Ed and Lorraine are there. Then they start talking about the incident in London. And so if you want to take over from there, talking about now in movie events of what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think it really started when the youngest, Janet, she got in trouble at school. And so, that's a bad day. And as we very well know, spirits like to feed off negative energy. And her friend had like made a Ouija board, like they had made a Ouija board or something out of like it looked like a cereal box almost.
Everything goes downhill. Every single ghost movie,
It doesn't even go downhill, dude. It drops off a cliff.
every single time someone pulls out a Ouija board, it's just like. And you know what the scary thing is? You can still buy those at Walmart.
Dude, I saw one in Target less than a week ago.
You can
I,
buy a Ouija board and take it into your own home. And
yes,
it's
but
just
you
like,
must be 8 years older to play with demons.
yeah. So, yeah. You have to. You must be 8 years or older, with or without parents' permission, because the only
Things are
permission
gonna
you need to
happen.
ask is the demon's permission. Anyways, I just thought we just have to stop and go on that little tirade for a second because it's just
Mm-hmm.
so weird because like every single movie that has to do with a haunting starts with a Ouija board. I mean, one of the most popular, famous movies of all time that still holds its own today is The Exorcist, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, where like they pull out a Ouija board
Mm-hmm.
and they
Here's
mess
the
with the
thing
Ouija
though.
board.
Right. The um Janet and her older sister, they had used it because they were just asking the spirits about just like random things like are you here? And then they start kind of getting into deeper stuff like is dad coming home? Because apparently their dad was like not a good guy and cheated on his wife or something with some lady from around the corner. That's how it was in the movie. I don't know how real that is. But so they ask the spirit like is dad going to come home? And they don't get an answer, so they just put it away.
Yeah, and that's where everything kind of drops off the cliff.
Yep. That's when the
Anyways,
free fall started.
yeah. And then what was it? And then like right, what was it? Was it like the next day Wilkins shows up, or was it like at night? That night,
Think it had then Janet started sleepwalking and waking up in that chair that he passed away in. Because he
right?
doesn't show up immediately.
Right. Like, sorry, it's been a little bit since like don't get me wrong, it's an amazing movie. It's just been a little bit since I've like seen the movie itself because I was gonna watch it here, but then I got busy with other stuff, and so I haven't
Right. And
watched
we
it. But I
did kind of
still,
pick this one last minute.
yeah, but like it's still like I still have it. It gets ingrained into your mind, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of one of the movies that you just can't really unsee.
Yeah, that one sticks with you for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, so she starts sleepwalking and ends up in his chair.
Yeah, and she's um and this is kind of where she also starts like sensing him, like it takes a toll on her body, like she doesn't feel well, she wants to stay home from school. And so she's home alone, just sitting on the couch watching TV, and the channel starts randomly flipping.
Is it known that the girl is a possible clairvoyant, or is it just kind of hinted at? Or was she just like, was that just the beginning steps of possession?
That was that wasn't the I think that was the beginning steps. Because I think the only clairvoyant in the series is Lorraine.
Well, oh, so was her. So was her sister in the Nun series, and they said that her daughter might be a clairvoyant as well. So, but
Possibly. I
yeah,
don't know too much about the daughter and the sister to have a say.
yeah. Anyway, so the possession has started. So then, sitting there and the TV's flipping through channels. What happens after that?
Um, it's been a while since I've seen the movie too, I'll be honest.
I think like the TV starts flipping channels, and I think after that, Bill
I think the
Wilkins
chair
appears.
starts
The chair starts shaking.
Yeah, the chair starts shaking. She's freaking out because who wouldn't?
Yeah,
Yeah, and then he appears behind her shoulder and like grabs her on the shoulder and he's like, "Get out of my house!" like yells in her ear.
yeah. Which
Um,
to any child, that would
that's
be,
terrifying.
yeah. I think it to anyone. It's not even like how old you are. I mean,
Oh no. You're
I'm
home
20.
alone and someone screams at you to get out? I'd run.
If something like grabbed me when I wasn't even paying attention, like I'm just sitting there and all of a sudden something just grabs me and yells at me to get out, yep, I'm out. I'm gone.
Yep,
See ya.
yep, this
Yep.
is your house now, yeah.
Yeah.
Take care of it.
Yep. Oh no, gasoline accidentally spilt, and oh no, the candle fell over.
Oh
Oops.
no, what a shame.
I know, right?
Funny how those things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously the mom gets home from work, the kids get home from school. Nobody believes her, right?
That's like a cliche in every horror
Yep,
movie
as it
ever.
starts, yep.
Yeah. There's someone
Nobody
haunting
believes
us.
anyone
No,
until it's
there's
too
not.
late. Um, yeah, then I think it's that night, or maybe it's like within the next couple nights. The son, um, he has this like kind of tent almost, like just up on the landing of the stairs that he just sits in and plays in, you know how it is.
Yeah.
And he's got like one of those fire trucks with all the lights and like you push it back and forth. It's fun, it's cool. We love it.
Yeah.
The mom is walking upstairs to tuck the kids into bed and the fire truck like starts like beeping and doing the lights. Or no, I think it was when the sun got up. No, the sun got up because he had too many cookies in the middle of the night, so he was thirsty.
Yeah.
It's always the cookies, man. And so the truck like slides out of his tent and hits him in the ankle. He's a young child. He freaks. He runs to his mother. He's going, "There's someone in my tent. There's someone in my tent." She doesn't believe him, of course, but she goes and checks it out because that's what mothers do.
Right.
And then I think it's at this point that I think it was like a ball or something was thrown out of the tent. And then that's kind of when the mother starts believing. It's like, okay, we're gonna go sleep with the neighbors tonight because if there is someone in our house, I'm not having my four children stay here.
Yeah. Which is probably, I would say, in horror movie history, probably like one of the smartest ideas.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
the sanest thing anyone's ever done in a horror movie.
yeah, because typically they're like, oh, we'll just stay here a few more days, maybe a week, and then it gradually just gets worse and worse. I think
Hmm.
because that's what happened in Annabelle, and I guess they're like, yeah, no, we're gonna learn from the Americans that we're not gonna do that.
Yeah, and then they this is when the reporter comes in, I believe. Because throughout this process, several other things were happening to Janet, who is trying to still convince people that, hey, something's not right here.
Yeah,
And then the thing happens with the boy and the mom. So naturally, the news finds out, they want to come do a segment on, like, is it a scam? Is it real? Like, give us your side of the story here. And then that's when Bill Wilkins' voice comes through Janet during the interview.
right. And then right after that interview, that's when we catch up to Ed and Lorraine
Yeah.
because they get called in. And it took a little bit of convincing because Lorraine was like, I don't know, I don't think so, because she saw a vision. She resaw the vision of Ed's death, which was like a spike. Because, clairvoyance, you don't see everything, you don't see like the whole picture.
Yeah, you just see bits and pieces.
Right. And so all she saw was like a spike that went through Ed's chest. And so,
Yeah, and she's like, I'm not going to do anything that could possibly put Ed in this situation.
right. And so, but Ed, being Ed, the freaking Chad that he is, he's like, no, we got a job to do. You know, let's go help this family. And so that's when now it was like right after the interview is when the Warrens show up and
Yeah,
they
the
start.
church saw the interview and they bring in the Warrens.
Right. And so the Warrens show up and then they start, and then that's when everything gets cranked to 11, and like really gets cranked to 11 in the movie because that's when everything starts happening.
Yeah, and it all happens all at once.
Yeah, like I think one of the best scenes is the Crooked Man scenes, and I want to talk about that scene for a little bit because
Oh, yes.
of the fact that it's a nursery rhyme that's like huge in England, right? It's a nursery
Hmm.
rhyme that's pretty big in England, and so and you just have like it's this old toy that what it is like a lamp and it spun around, and it was like a cartoon, like a mobile cartoon basically, and it did like the jingle, and I'm like, first of all, I look at it as like, who would give that to their child?
I would have lost my mind if I received that as a
Oh,
child.
I mean, I think looking back as now as adults, we would look like loved it as a child, but I think you would think possibly at that age to see the way that dude look, I would have nightmares. The
Yeah, the
way that
dude
thing,
looked like he was a spider with pants.
yeah. And so then like the kids playing with that toy, listening to the rhyme, and then it just steadily kept getting faster and faster and faster, and then all of a sudden he just comes through the door,
Right.
and you got to think about the amount of makeup that they had to put on that poor guy because um, they got like it was they said like the world's tallest actor, which is this
Hmm.
guy out of Spain, and they put him under all of that makeup to be the Crooked Man, and how it just comes out with just pure swagger, you know,
Oh, yeah.
and then
And then he shows up again too, and when they're spending the night at the neighbors.
yeah, so
Uh
it's like a double. It's like the
yeah, double
Crooked Man,
feature, the Crooked
yeah,
Man.
yeah, Crooked Man shows up twice, you know,
Hmm. He was a paid actor.
yeah. Well, to be fair, it wasn't a paid actor. It was still Valak, just in a different form.
Right, yeah. Little costume change for Valak.
Well, because like Valak, what Valak does is he feeds on your weaknesses and your fears,
Right, he uses the things you love and turns them against you.
right? And like, there are certain things that you're not certain of. Like that's why Valak is like takes the form of a nun with Lorraine, and also in the nun series, is the fact that Valak is trying to deter them away from doing that, like either being a nun or following the Catholic religion, you know. And that's why Valak became a nun in the series. And so Valak took the form of the Crooked Man because the Crooked Man scared the kid. And do you remember the 3 steps of possession that Ed had during the classroom scene?
Probably not in the correct order. I know infestation is one of them.
Right.
Uh, I can't remember what the second one's called. No, it's slipping my mind right now.
I'd say, yeah. I'm looking this up as we speak because again, this is the first podcast, so I can do what I want.
Infestation, oppression, and possession. Yeah.
Yep, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn how to type and it didn't work. I had to learn how to spell super quick.
What are letters?
Right.
English these days, I tell you.
But that was during the infestation stage. Or
I
what?
think that would be more towards the oppression
Yeah,
because
that's
infestation
the
is more of
impression.
just
That yes, that is the
the
impression
knocks and the
stage.
bumps. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the oppression phase because it starts creating havoc in the household.
Yeah, and that's when it's like turned mental, like
Like it,
you're
they're
trying to break down the person's will.
yeah, which is like what they want to do, and this is even going towards like real life, like real demonic possession, as those steps are what it is, right?
Yeah.
Um, because they don't just go in and just take out, like they can't just go in and possess a body wherever, whenever, right? It's like it takes steps to get to that point.
Yeah, it's a process.
So, anyway, so it steadily gets worse and worse. And another one of my favorite scenes is when they finally go back into the home,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole neighborhood donates crosses, and they put them all in the room. And in normal demonology, the cross is supposed to prevent the demon from coming in, right? Like the
Right.
demon fears God, fears Jesus Christ, and things like that. And so they put those crosses in there because crosses are not supposed, like it's supposed to be a barrier. Well, then Valak was like, or no, Bill Wilkins, because we at this point we don't know that it's Valak.
Right.
Like no one knows it's actually Valak at this point. And so Bill Wilkins is like, "You want to bet?" Goes in there and flips all of them upside down.
Yeah, and I think it's while Peggy is showing Ed the room.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
and Ed's checking
everything's,
it out. He's looking around, and they all just start slowly flipping upside down.
and then the door slams, lights start flickering, and then that's when they progressively got faster and faster and faster. And then the
Mm-hmm.
crosses start getting knocked off the wall and things like
Yeah,
that.
things just go flying.
And again, amazing job with with the shots and the timing of everything. That you can probably it took them so long to get that down perfectly.
Yeah, and it also makes me wonder, like, how much of that was unscripted, just so it wouldn't be fake fear, Like that fear would be real.
Well, what like a lot of directors do, and James Wan is famous for doing this as well, is he will never tell his actors, and a lot of the actors kind of stay in character. Like they tell them like, hey, just stay in character while you're on here, and then they'll just randomly do it.
Hmm.
And that's when, because it's a lot harder to act genuinely scared unless you are genuinely scared.
Right. You can't be
You can't fake
genuinely
that.
terrified. Yeah, if you know what's coming, it's not the same as genuinely being afraid
Oh,
of
one of
this
my
just happened. I
right,
must react.
yeah, like one of my favorite ones actually comes from the Friday the 13th franchise. I know I keep saying that phrase, but again, it's like my favorite series. Friday the 13th, the final chapter. I don't know if you remember that movie at all,
Hmm.
but it wasn't the final chapter. But that again, another subject for another day. Um, the scene where Jason comes out of the window and grabs Corey Feldman, like grabs Tommy Jarvis when he comes to
Yeah.
the window. The director did not tell Corey Feldman that Jason was going to do that. He did not
Right.
tell him that he was going to do that, and so that's what made it legit. Like you can tell the fear on his face, and so I don't know for sure that that was what it was in that scene where they didn't tell the actors that, hey, this is going to happen. Um, we're just not going to tell you when, because some of them, like some actors, are so good you can't tell if they're faking it or not, right?
Yeah.
And so, anyways, and then one of the biggest things is like, okay, we had that. All right, now let's flip all the crosses back up and then put the girl in the room. And it's like you just watched the crosses get turned over, right?
Hmm.
You just watched the crosses get turned over, and what? You know, it's a good idea.
Let's put the 11-year-old girl in the room.
Yeah. The one that the ghost is actually going after, yeah, let's put her in that room that we know is unsafe. But it's
Hmm.
safe now.
Now that the demonologist has visited there, we're good to go.
After the demonologist confirmed that, yeah, you're good, I know we just watched all this happen, but
It's
that's just
fine
that's
now.
just the
Shh.
thing with horror movies in general. That's just the thing with horror movies in
Yeah.
general. It's like it's it's not a good horror movie unless you make really dumb decisions. Unless
Yep.
you just make the dumbest decisions of all time,
It's
right?
I'm pretty sure it's legally required.
Yeah. And so, but also it kind of shows, we make that joke that it's a dumb decision for people, like people make dumb decisions, but like I worked at a haunted house this past Halloween season and loved it. 10 out of 10 would recommend anyone who loves horror to do something like that, to work at a haunted house, because you get to see like the other side of it. And I know for sure several people that I scared because how like my room was set up. And again, this is completely off topic. Again, we just like going on tirades on here, okay, people?
Just accept it. Yeah.
This still doesn't
It's
mean
gonna
you don't have to,
happen.
hit subscribe and all that good stuff, and follow, listen wherever you listen to your podcast. We'd love for you to listen to this. Anyways, so the way my room was set up, I was a crazy dentist, and the way, and I'll have a picture of me and my dentist thing, and I'll put the video up without the audio of how it was set up. And so, anyways, and so you would walk in, and then you have to go around a corner because there's like an island bar thing, and then you have to walk past one dentist chair, and then you have to go through the sheets that's opening, and then you walk out. Well, where I would hide is close to the first chair in the little hideaway for actors only, and I would put a dummy head and a torso underneath a sheet on one of the chairs. So then here's the smart thing with people is they tried to stay away. They stayed away from that, obviously, right?
Right.
Because if you walked into a thing and you saw just something underneath the sheet, you're going to avoid it. It's a
Yeah.
natural human instinct. It's a survival instinct. And then I would pop up behind them. And then when fear sets in, all logic shuts off. And it's like, as I saw people trying to run through, like people like ran into the wall. They run out. They would try to run into an area where they're not supposed to go into, and things like that. And so, like blatantly dumb decisions, yes, that's only in the films. But dumb decisions in general that can happen in real life,
Hmm.
like seeing from firsthand. Anyways, so and then obviously the whole bedroom. Back to the story. Back to the whole bedroom. The thing with the bedroom, it that doesn't go well.
No,
You
it
know,
does
that
not.
it does not. You know, gets attacked again. That's when it's Bill Wilkins is pulling her hair.
Yeah, and that's when the photo is captured.
Yeah, the photos captured of the hair pull. And so I love how they wait to get her after they take a photo. It's like, hold on, we'll save
Smile
you,
for the
but we
photo.
got to take a picture first.
Hmm.
It's just modern day.
Right. And she's like fully off the ground too. She's like floating in midair.
By her hair.
Yeah,
I don't have long hair, but I can imagine that probably hurts a
it's
lot.
not a good time. Yeah.
And so, yeah, and that like that those events of that night, that's what happens. And then do you want to? I guess you can take it up from there when they started to like started to look show everything was fake, because I think that's when the events of the possible fake started happening.
Yeah. Um, so the photo came to light, and this is when the reporter really gets going with the, I'm pretty sure they're faking it just to get better housing. And then this is when Bill slash Valak starts to lean into this theory to push the people away and hide that, hey, something actually is going on here. Janet starts like throwing things in the kitchen, like just completely
On
disheveling the place,
camera,
right?
on camera, because
Yeah,
there's
on
cameras
camera.
set up throughout the house.
Yes, they
Because
had
like
put cameras in the house trying to capture evidence.
because at this time you don't know, Bill slash Valak visited Janet at night and said, if you don't do this, I'm going to kill your entire family.
Right. Obviously, you're a child. You don't want that to happen. No one wants that to happen. So she does what he says. Um, and then this is when the reporter comes forward after they've seen this evidence and say, there's no demon here. There's nothing here. This was all just an elaborate scheme made up by this family.
Because it shows like Janet throwing the things, moving the chair, like picking the chairs up and putting them on the table,
Yeah, like
everything.
breaking silverware, like bending silverware.
Everything that was
Yeah,
claimed before, then it shows like, oh, then Janet does it on camera.
right. And it all just goes down the toilet. So the Warrens leave after this because they have no choice because Lorraine didn't sense anything from the spiritual side of things. She could only sense the family's own fear.
Yeah, she
So
couldn't
they have no
sense Bill.
choice.
She couldn't sense Bill at all.
No, so they have no choice but to leave and go home.
Because
And they're,
The Vatican, I think, told them to leave too, because they're like, we're sorry that we wasted your time. Yada yada yada.
yeah, yeah, they're on the, they're like boarding the train back, and Ed pulls out this was the old time, so it was this massive like tape recorder thing. Because during the interview and when Ed and Lorraine were there, they also had a conversation with Bill through Janet. They listened to the messages separately, and they're kind of bits and pieces, um, almost like you're breaking up on a phone call, you know?
Yeah.
And then Ed gets the little switch in his brain flips and he rewinds both the tapes, hits play on both of them at the same time. And then that's when the real message comes through. And it's Bill's voice and he's saying, "Help me, it won't let me go." Obviously, pretend I'm an old man.
Help me,
And
it
it's just
won't let
playing,
me go.
"Help me, it won't let me go." It's
This
just playing
bloody
this over
thing
and
won't
over.
let me go. We have to get all
And
British in
this,
this, right?
oh yeah. "Good chap, it won't let me go."
Oh, beans and toast.
And so this is when Ed and Lorraine know, like, this is actually happening. There's something in that house. It's not just all fake. So they go back to just utter chaos being unleashed.
Well,
Because Valak
so it
has.
wasn't. I think utter chaos was starting to get released, but then Lorraine went back into that realm of the clairvoyance, and she actually saw Bill. Like,
Yeah,
and Bill
she.
explained everything, that this thing was the one that was controlling everything. Like, he won't let me leave. He won't let me move on.
Yeah, as soon as that message had finished playing, she gets like slammed back into her train seat, and that's when it goes like he starts explaining like, "I'm Bill, nice to meet you. There's a demon haunting this family, and I'm the conduit." But he doesn't like tell her directly, he's because apparently that's the way spirits work. They can't just it's
Outright
all it's
say, outright
no,
say, oh, I'm
exactly.
being.
He gives her this little riddle. Yeah, he gives her this little riddle of how to defeat Valak.
And then also on top of that, it's like how they figured out it was Valak. If you just look a little bit up, if you see the person standing behind me, yep, that's the person right there. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Right here.
And that's when they
Yeah,
turned
and
around and went back to the house.
yeah, but at this point they still don't know Valak's name. But they do actually, because like we brought up earlier, that scene with the painting when Valak was bum rushing Lorraine at the painting. This was all a vision, right? So Lorraine is in her trance-like state, scribbling furiously in her Bible the demon's name, which is Valak. Like there's just if you've ever seen the movie, you can see this scene. It's like on a giant it's like one word a page. So it's
One,
massive.
yeah, one letter a page.
Yes, that's high English. Yeah, so they rush back and Lorraine figures out like, okay, to beat this demon, we need its name. But there's so much else going on right now at the house that she's got better priorities of trying to keep this family safe right now and getting them out of that situation. Then they can deal with the demon.
Yeah. And so then they get back to the house, and it's absolutely insane. And they try to go through the front door, but they couldn't. And so they had to go to the basement, which it was storming that night, and the basement was flooded.
Yeah, and they already had like crappy pipes and stuff at the house. So apparently Valak just went ham in there and burst everything on top of the storm.
And like again, this is like the final act, the climax. Again, just everything done beautifully. Can't say enough. Like James Wan's direction, the dedication of the actors, the set designers, just everything was just done beautifully throughout the whole film, and then that part especially was done beautifully.
Yeah.
And so I think
Yeah,
what,
it's beautiful.
yeah, and it's so Ed gets in, he goes in through the basement and takes a little bit. He has to fight the way through because like Valak shut the basement door, and so
Yeah, he had
eventually
to
he had to like
um
break it down basically.
yeah, I think the neighbor ran over to his house to grab an axe or something.
Yeah, and so then eventually Ed gets in there, and then gets the front door open and gets Lorraine in there, and so and they run upstairs because they hear Janet screaming up
Right.
in her room. And so they both,
Yeah, and she's just being chucked around like a poor rag doll.
yeah, and then she's about to be thrown out the window too. She's like on the edge. She's like holding on to the window at that point.
Yeah.
And Ed comes out, and then also at the same time, lightning strikes the tree that's right next to the window and knocks
Yeah, it was
down
like
the
right
tree.
underneath the window. The tree falls, and this is where it gets to Lorraine's vision. She sees that spike and she's like, I know that spike. This is going to happen if I don't do something.
And at that point, Ed went out and he grabbed Janet and was holding on to her. And
Right.
he was
And
also
then
fighting, like they were fighting Valak at the same time. And so Valak's trying to push him out the window. At the same time,
Ed's
he's trying
hanging
to
onto
pull
the
her.
curtains
Yeah.
for dear life. And Lorraine is freaking out like, what do I do? How do I stop Valak? Because she's also being like thrown into the wall by Valak to prevent reaching them. And then she finally figures out the riddle from Bill. Um, and so she's thinking, what is your name? What is your name? And she's like, I know your name. I wrote it down. Um, and then she just screams like,
You're Valak the
Valak!
Defiler.
Yeah. And then we see Valak just kind of start to almost like disintegrate. Like he gives this giant roar, like, dang it, you know my name now. I have not bested you. And just like, you can see his true demon shape at this point. Um, and then he just kind of crumbles into the ground.
Yeah. And there are some, they didn't really 100% show the true demon. Like they were going to. So if you like watch the behind the scenes and things like that, they were going to show the demon, but then at like last minute, they decided not to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, you get to see the demon form in the Nun movies, right? But you don't see it in the Conjuring. And so, which I'll have some images pop up on the screen for the people watching the video. Images pop up on the screen with like the demon, um, and and I'm pretty sure you've seen the demon images, Grace.
Yes, I
Yeah,
have.
and it's insane. Like the demon looked just insane.
Yeah, it's incredible. There's this one photo that I've seen of behind the scenes, and it's the demon and the actor that played Valak, and they're just sitting there smiling to the camera,
And
and it's
also, the demon's towering over her, the Valak
that demon's
actor.
like 10 feet tall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the demon's like over the top of the Valak actor.
Mm-hmm. And Valak's already tall.
Yeah, and so then so back to the stories that they defeat Valak, and she pulls Ed in, and Ed pulls in Janet, and you know everything is, we believe, is good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and at like every horror movie that has a good ending, they all drive off in the sunset. The family thanks Ed and Lorraine. They do the exorcism again, just to make sure they declare the house clean. They go back to the United States. That family goes back to their house. And I think, were they getting ready like, weren't they moving out by the end of the movie? I believe they're getting ready to move out of the house.
I think so, yeah.
And so, um, yeah, and then there actually is a post-credit scene that's actually for the like that's in the Conjuring 2. That's for the Conjuring 3, and that's when it shows the Annabelle doll hitting the glass.
Mm-hmm.
That's like one of the post-credit scenes of it. But again, phenomenal movie in total, and they followed the actual story like really good, minus like obviously they had to change the things up for Hollywood, right?
Of course.
And because like if you look into Ed Lorraine's like life story when it comes to demonology, they never really had, I don't think they've ever had anything as exciting as they had it in the movies, right? Like obviously Hollywood kind of,
Hollywood big stuff's up.
yeah,
Yeah.
they blow things out of proportion, which is not a bad thing.
I-
If it gets people in seats, go for it, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but again, it's just a phenomenal movie, shot perfectly, acted perfectly, directed perfectly. Like that's why it's like one of my favorite horror movies of all time.
Yeah.
Because it's just a really good movie in general.
Hmm.
And so, um, yeah, that's our take on The Conjuring 2. Um, Again, it's like we said, it's like I know I keep repeating it's great because it is. It's great. you know,
Yeah. If you haven't watched it, you should.
it's on Max, I believe. Yep, it's on
Yes.
Max. You can get it on Hulu with the Max, with like Max subscription. So just get HBO Max at that point. Um, as I would recommend it. I don't recommend watching at night. Um,
No.
and not recommending it watching it around small children, because I don't think children are ready for that level because it is
It's
pretty.
intense.
It's a really intense movie. It gets intense like almost right off the bat, and it just stays that way. There's not really a dull moment. Like for as many jumps that are in the movie, there's less of like like there's the perfect amount of calmness in between,
Yeah.
which you don't get a lot of that for like jump scare movies. You know,
No,
movies that are known for
it's
that.
always suspenseful.
It's always like, and at some point, like in the movie, it just like the jump scares don't even get you anymore.
Hmm.
But with this movie, it gets you like all the time, no matter
Every
what,
single time. Yeah.
every single time. It doesn't matter if you've only seen it once, you've seen it 1,000 times. You're still gonna jump at those particular scenes, you know. And so, anyways, yeah. Well, this is Nightmare Talks, and we just went over The Conjuring 2. Grace, how do you think we did today?
I think we did good.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a little weird just talking about horror movies that it's fun, but it's like, oh, we're just putting this out for people to listen to. It's just two
Yeah.
people having a conversation, and but we hope you enjoyed this. Um, Next week we're going to be discussing the movie Saw, the first
Ooh,
one,
a
and
classic.
yes, good classic slasher movie that really brought in the genre of what is called torture porn. Don't ask me why it's called that. It's just called that. But, anyways, or corn. I'll fix it in the editing. Um, Anyways, no, I won't. Anyways, um, but yeah, this is Nightmare Talks. I'm Smiley,
I'm Grace.
and appreciate it, and hope you guys have a
Thanks for
great.
listening.
Thanks listening, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And be spooky.